What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another edition of the podcast. Hello, how are you today? I'm your host, Mitch Corbett, and welcome to another episode. That was a very bad transition. I realize that, and I will try and get better. This week, we have Danny Alexander. Danny is the co-founder of Empty Fest in Sarnia, Ontario. They have Empty Fest 11 coming up on April 29th and 30th of this month coming up. Tickets are limited, but they've been over to 11 years. And they have a whole whack load of fucking cool bands. So if you're into like cool rock and roll, like indie shit, I highly recommend making your way to Sarnia on the 29th and 30th. Danny is also a filmmaker, a promoter. He's a musician himself, so we get a little bit into like, you know, how do you balance promotion as well as playing yourself, transition from a small town to a large city like from Sarnia to Toronto. It's a really good conversation. Check out right now with Danny Alexander. So you're a filmmaker as well?
Yeah, more like a videographer.
Okay.
Although I did dabble in. I tried to put my hat into the ring for that a year ago.
Oh, like making a full-fledged film?
Yeah.
How hard and arduous was that?
Insanely hard.
Yeah.
Well, not. Yeah, I mean, it was a ton of time that I wouldn't be afforded usually. But the pandemic, it's about the pandemic, and the pandemic allowed me to do it.
Oh, happy with the result, or
did you read into it or something, or how did you know that I did film?
you in the email you sent me that you were on a film set.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, I was doing some video today. Yeah.
So similar paths. There's like you're a videographer, and
yeah, I'm a
actually,
videographer.
so like let's start this because I'm here with Danny Alexander of the co-founder of Empty Fest in Sarnia, Ontario. I want to have you on the podcast because I feel like our paths are very linear or similar in the sense that like when I was 2019 college age, I tried to do event promotion. I had a few shows. One was at my house called Mitchapalooza, and then I tried to do one at St. Catharines, Brock University called Mitchapalooza 2. And it was extremely hard, extremely difficult, extremely stressful. And you've been putting on this show, Empty Fest, for about 10 years now. So how were you able to do it? Teach me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
I think you have one successful show, and that did you have at least one that made you want to keep doing it?
Well, yeah, we had at a house, so it was an
Yeah.
awesome time, right? No, we just paid like everyone gas money and shit like that. So it was like it was
Yeah.
very rudimentary. It was there not being a brawl on my front yard at the end of it, to be honest. It was very rock and roll-esque. We had Street Pharmacy, Mean Tangerine, Killer Green, and I think it was the Halftime Nights. I'm not sure. But we had all those guys on the show. It was a night.
Solid band names. I
Yeah.
don't know them, but I like the band names a lot.
They're
yeah.
they're more the reggae kind of like ska vibe
Oh yeah,
of Sublime sort of thing.
cool. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I've had so many kind of bummer shows where, even though a decent turnout came out eventually, like 30 to 40 people, it could have been one of those shows where like it took forever for those 30 people to show up, or that many people came through the door throughout the night, but it never accumulated to the room filling full. Like, to me, that was a failure, but to other people that might be like a totally good show. But like, my ambition is to always pack the room. Like, I think anyone that does promotion would want that. So you can get down on yourself when you don't totally succeed by reaching capacity each time, and that does happen quite often. But I think if the band, like, sometimes I think a show is kind of a failure, and the bands that came down to play it were like really happy because the people that were there enjoyed it. And that's like really the most important thing. And I know that from experience of like going to a small or to a different town to play. I mean, we're happy if there's like 30 people there, because like nobody knows who we are.
So how do you, as a promoter, how do you balance the expectations between the results, right? Like, are you just, I hope everyone has a good time, or you're like, I hope I make money and everyone has a good time, or I hope I make money? Because I find that in the entertainment field specifically, like a lot of people put on shows just to make money, and they're miserable afterwards. Like they don't get to enjoy the actual
Oh
event
yeah.
itself.
People would sit me down that are actually like full-time promoters and be like, you're doing something wrong if you're not making money. But that's like the reality. I've never made any significant money from a show, which has allowed me to kind of stick to my morals, I guess. And I always kind of tell people if they're kind of, it doesn't happen too often, but if a band is kind of pushing me for more money, I'm like, well, here's the deal. Like, it really, like, if the people come, they come. I'll try my best to make it work. But I don't really want to be on the line to pay you that guarantee. So I kind of stick to my gut if I'm actually able to honor that. Like, I just don't want to lose money. That's the main thing.
Yeah, you want to kind of break even, have
Yeah.
everyone have a good time, right?
Yeah. So yeah, the few shows where it is for whatever reason kind of a bummer because maybe not enough people showed up, or you just feel like a band that you really wanted to showcase should have had more people there, and that's like an internal kind of mechanism. Like I'm disappointed in myself, even though like probably other people were totally happy with it. That's what I try to avoid, I guess. And that's like, yeah, I haven't had any shows that are just like total, like no one shows up, thank God. But I think you just have to make the effort and kind of have like the hindsight that these bands are going to work together and do a fair bit of promotion to make sure that it,
People see it, people
yeah,
come.
yeah.
So like when you're planning a show, like how much work actually goes into it? Because like the problem I ran into is like the one day I booked a show, the one I booked at St. Catharines, it was in the middle of midterms. So no one came out because everyone was studying and stuff like that. So like,
Oh yeah.
are you having to look at the calendar and like pick out, which dates would be the best for, people wanting to go out and have an adventure?
Yep. I'd always try to avoid like May 2/4 weekend and things like that. Does that like you think, oh, it's like vacation time, but people are leaving the city. Speaking like from a Sarnia perspective anyway. And yeah, sometimes I would be, oh yeah, for Empty Fest, I think that we initially, like I'm going way back here, but me and my old collaborator, who no longer helps out with it, but he's the OG kind of like guy, Eric Woolston. I hope he comes down this year, but yeah, he's kind of busy, so I'm just doing it solo this year. But we had identified that like April 30th is a good time to do it, like end of April, because Sarnia's student population, since Sarnia doesn't really have like a
A
huge
youth, yeah, it's okay, I get it. Yeah.
university scene, like we're actually waiting for people to come back from college, so that was kind of the reasoning there, and it seemed to work out pretty well. Like, let off some steam, come back home, party.
Party on, Wayne.
Yeah. Actually, I kind of forgot about that this year. I'm like, yeah, let's just do it that same weekend that we usually do it. But that was kind of the reasoning at the time.
So, like the first one you had, like you did empty rooms all across Sarnia, which I think was a dope concept because it reminds me of Scene Fest in St. Catharines, where you go to different venues and you get like the 1 day pass and just hop around. Such a blast. And now you guys have like one singular stage, or are you guys hopping around again?
Oh yeah, so about that, yeah, the name Empty Spaces did come from that original idea of like finding like a totally empty room, like abandoned, like
The void,
building.
if you will.
Yeah, but it like really only happened once. And we knew the owner of the property, or like even like he didn't even own the property, he just like rented the space, but it was pretty much like an empty room. He like did woodworking in there or something. But yeah, he had reasonable insurance, or maybe, yeah, whatever, like we had the insurance covered, and it just like we kind of pulled it off. Yeah, it's like empty space is cool, but then like show two, if it's not going to be there, where is it going to be? So that added, like, it compounded how difficult it is to pull off that concept, so we just like kind of dropped it. Other than like, obviously when we do a show outside in like a courtyard, that's technically filling an empty space, but we just kind of kept the name. Like any bar is going to be an empty space until you do something cool to make it full, right? But I think it's kind of like people don't question it too much. So it's just kind of funny, people don't know the background to that story, but they just kind of assume they accept that it's called Empty Spaces and Empty Fest, even though it sounds like a bad thing probably.
And it's such an interesting like difference because it's called Empty Fest, and so like, but all the bands you have, because I've checked out the lineup a bit, the soul is there from every band. Like they're not empty inside, you know. Like you sometimes like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, is this gonna be like, I
The
don't even know
Nihilist
what that would
Festival.
be, like a soulless artist or something like that. But like, you know, like more mellow-tone sort of like music, but like it's all like heavy punk rock fun stuff, like dance music. Like when you did the first one, were you able to enjoy it?
Oh yeah, I wanted to kind of answer that before. Like whenever I get stuck on door at one of my own shows, I'm like, what am I doing? Like, and I know so many people that do that. Like no disrespect, like so much respect for them for doing that, but I literally want to party at my shows. Like I don't want to be uh totally intoxicated, you know what I mean? But I want to be kind of in the audience and do all the work leading up to that, all the organization, when they show up, help in, load in, do the logistics. But I don't want to be stuck doing something kind of boring at the show. Like I feel like, why am I putting the effort into it, especially since it really isn't a moneymaker at all? Like, like what is the point? And I think that's reasonable. But I do know a lot of promoters that like do sit at the door the whole time, and I think that's like kind of like, just get somebody to do it and enjoy yourself,
Like,
because
so like that's very, it's interesting because like, you put on the work, you should be able to, reap benefits of that sort of work. um and it's a shame that some people don't, like even film directors don't always get to enjoy the final product because like they've been spending like, I don't know, 100 hours editing with the editors, and they're like, I don't even want to see the premiere. They
yeah,
go
yeah.
in, they pretend to go into the theater, and they walk right out. Like, I'm done. I've seen it already like a billion times. With that being said, like with the interactions you've had with other promoters, like what are some of the tips and tricks that you've learned with being a promoter,
um
if
uh,
any?
I think
It seems pretty chaotic sometimes.
I think it's been extremely helpful to have a um, like a series to kind of fall back on. Like, say if it's just like a random show and you're just like labeling it as like, this show is happening, and you just have a bunch of band names. I feel like you're kind of like fighting an uphill battle at that point, because like you really are just depending on solely the band to pull people. And okay, it's just like another show. But yeah, like have like it's been such a long time now, and a lot of the longevity and the success of Empty Spaces has been, I think, because it has that name and people know that it's going to be like cool original music. So yeah, I think that's really important to kind of like, I hate to use the word brand yourself, but yeah, that's kind of what it is, right? Like you have to kind of establish like a um, some kind of foundation of like quality, and then hopefully the word spreads around and you can kind of build some kind of community around that.
And
I'm actually I'm starting like a new thing in Toronto, actually, like very first show, a week before Empty Fest, and I gave it a name as well. So like
promote it,
I
man. What's going on? Tell us, give us the deets.
oh, well, I've done like some very minimal promotion in Toronto, and once again, it's like it's almost always under that category of just like whatever band I'm in, like just make a show around it, and that's totally fine. But I realized that why haven't I started like a Toronto series yet? So I kind of thought about a name and found a venue that I thought was kind of unique and underutilized. So it's in a basement, so it's called Subsession.
Okay.
Subsession, and it's going to be kind of like numbered like the way that Empty Spaces started out. So Subsession 1, Subsession 2. We'll see where it goes. Like
Yeah.
I hope it kind of takes off, but yeah, it's maybe a difficult time to launch a new concert series in
I
the
mean,
middle of the
especially in
pandemic.
Toronto when like there's so much going on. So,
Mhm.
I mean, what are the loopholes you've had to jump through, or not loopholes, but hoops you've had to jump through to get a show in Toronto off the ground?
Um, I think, well,
Or do
coming
you know
here.
the scene fairly well, like with
Yeah,
your own background, music
that
background?
was huge. Yeah, I mean, as soon as I found some kind of a kinship with a community, identified with like, okay, these are people that we like to play with, or yeah, you just kind of identify it all of a sudden. But when I first moved here, I didn't find that immediately, unfortunately. I think everyone's experience is a little bit different, but um, the scene I'm actually in didn't exist for starters. It took a while for it to establish itself, but yeah, I just felt kind of alienating or something. There's like other scenes that I was trying to get a part of, but didn't quite work out right away, which is fine.
It,
But as soon as I found myself in a scene, I'm like, oh wow, this is like a lot easier to pull people out because it's very supportive, right? And
it's
like,
interesting because I came here about 2 years ago to London, got involved with the comedy scene, shut down again, shut down. And so like it's taken me about 2.5 years to actually make like real friends, real connections, real, communications in the community. And like when you are able to do that, it makes life more enjoyable despite all the shitty things in life like money and bills and all that fun stuff. You mentioned that you're also an artist yourself. So you're let me guess here, promoter, artist, filmmaker, anything else that we can tell you about you or
yeah, those are the main things. Yeah, art is definitely like the thing I'm like not as good at, but I feel like
artist in the sense that you're a musician, sorry.
yeah. I went to fine art school, but I ended up sucking at painting. It turned in. Well, yeah, and that's how I kind of major and stuff in college, but yeah, like I focused in primarily in video, so kind of came out with like doing video and photography and things like that. Yeah.
Are you good with like the whole like I know that social media is such a big part of promotion nowadays. Are you able to, do the Empty Fest and do the shows that you do and also add that video element to help promote it? Or are you like, I do that as a career. I don't want to do add more work to yourself, or do you hire out for that sort of thing? Or is it something you even do or consider?
Something I really enjoyed doing, it wasn't so much video, which I think is like almost like too much of what I do every day. I'm a videographer, so
Same.
I
I
didn't want
feel
to like
you.
wait. But I know how important the video aspect can be, but photography was very quick and an easy turnaround. And I'm actually thinking back to like previous Empty Fests. I would like wake up probably a little bit hungover and like edit through the previous night's photos. Like it'd be nice. I'd be having coffee, very much buzzing from the previous night, and then just like, okay, I'm gonna post a bunch of photos and show people like what they missed out on to get people to come out to the next night. And I think it worked pretty well actually. But I don't know if I'll be doing it this year. Like I'm like, I don't know if that was just me being younger. It just seems
No, it's 100% being younger. I haven't.
yeah, it seems kind of crazy to me now. Like, why did I do that? It's like so much to sort through. But maybe I will. Yeah, I think it's actually very effective to get people to come
I
out.
think I think at our age, I feel like we're probably around the same age, where you're just like, if I do it, I'll do it because I want to, not because I have to, sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, even for this year's like festival, I did the first like Instagram promo. It's a video, but it just like it wasn't even that like complex of a video, but I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go to posting photos instead because if I do this for every band, it's gonna take up a lot of time. So yeah, you find shortcuts and whatever is like the most efficient and not time consuming.
And like, so like as a musician yourself, and you've said you've been in bands, like, have you gotten to appear on your own festival or anything like that?
Yeah, there's like some of that. What do you? Is it nepotism? I don't know. I try to avoid it as much as possible. I was actually thinking about that. I'm like, yeah, I didn't book my band every festival. That's good, but yeah, I am actually performing at this upcoming year.
Oh yeah. Oh, how long has it been since you guys performed?
This band is pretty new, but I'm also like thinking it's pretty like I feel strongly about it. So I'm like, yeah, I don't think it would be a weak spot or something like that. So Yeah, I think that's kind of why I may have avoided certain bands before. I'm like, yeah, I just want to showcase like the best that Toronto has to offer. And that's like back when I lived in Sarnia. So it wasn't so much about like showcasing my band or whatever. But now that yeah, now we are one of the Toronto bands and I want to play Sarnia.
Well, yeah, so you mentioned Sarnia there, and I think that's a good topic point. It's like when you're younger, growing up in Sarnia, I know for a fact, having worked there now, that there's not much of an opportunity for young people to perform and get their voice heard out loud in that city. Was Empty Fest a way for you to get that voice heard, or was it just like I want to give people in the community a chance, like young people, a chance to like get out of their houses and do something fun?
Yeah, I mean, since we did show like Empty Fest is the annual festival, but before that it was like pretty much like once a month, maybe even more often than that, like Empty Spaces shows. So there's always an issue of like there's not enough local openers to open these shows. So like like some of my bands definitely had to open because there's only like 10 bands that existed, right? It's be this like cycle of like, okay, are you ready to open for this other band? Let's do it. So yeah, there's definitely some cool connections that were made, but it was never about that. It was the initial idea behind it was to definitely bring touring bands to Sarnia and to hopefully inspire the Sarnia bands to kind of, I don't want to say like raise their game or something, but like kind of, yeah,
Give them exposure, maybe.
it's so insular before 100%. Like there definitely wasn't that many touring bands coming through. So Sarnia is like whatever tiny music scene was happening was kind of not speaking for the punk scene. I had nothing to do with that, and that was actually going really well, I think, at the time. And then I actually ended up booking like more punk bands as it went along. But whatever, I don't like the term indie rock, but like I think that's where we started off, kind of bringing in stuff like that. And yeah, that whole like touring circuit did not really exist as far as I knew at that point. So yeah, it just kind of made people aware of Sarnia from outside. And yeah, usually the touring slash like Toronto bands were very excited to play Sarnia.
Yeah, because it is like at the core, Sarnia is a great city. There's just like there's this kind of like cloud over it in sense of like, you know, same old happening all the time, and you're in there and like, so how not how did you escape, but like how were you able to transition out of Sarnia to go to Toronto, and like, how different are those scenes in your opinion?
I mean, it's a population thing versus like, I think relative to its size, at least like going from the peak of the time that I was like living in Sarnia and doing Empty Spaces, I felt like there were like maybe 8 to 10 like really good original bands at that point, like my own personal opinion of what a good band was. And I thought, hey, that's like pretty good actually for a city of like 70,000, like making like good original music that was like interesting. So yeah, you multiply that by whatever Toronto's population is, and I think it's like kind of relative, right?
Was it jaw drop not jaw well yeah jaw dropping to like, because like I came from a small town, Kincardine, which is like 12,000
Yeah.
people, right? And then I went to Welland, which is like Sarnia size, and then I moved to Toronto, and then I moved to Hamilton. And though like those transitions are like, medium building up and everything, but like to go from one environment to another, sometimes it can be a little shocking. Like, how were you able to do that transition between Sarnia and Toronto?
Oh, like once I actually moved to Toronto.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of some growing pains there for sure. I definitely missed the vibe of the Sarnia shows. And I also felt like where I was doing something that kind of set me apart in Sarnia by doing the shows. I was like a complete nobody when I came here, right? And so it's more of like an observer, and and that's good. It was like definitely a good experience to go through that, but it was like, obviously a bit of an adjustment just to be like an observer and have nothing to offer the scene at first.
Did you get to
And
enjoy it as that? Like just kind of go to shows and kind of actually relax and just enjoy the shows then?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's actually what I was telling people and telling myself at the time. Like I was like very excited to move to Toronto. But the one thing that was like kind of I don't notice it as much now, which is kind of scary because it probably just turned into like whatever I turned into that person. But yeah, something that was so striking to me was how people didn't move around as much in Toronto.
They
Uh,
can't afford it, so I mean.
yeah, yeah, and I don't even know if or like at shows like actually like, getting into the music and stuff
Oh,
like,
okay.
but that could have been a time and place in Sarnia too. The shows at the beginning of Empty Spaces were like, I don't know, the younger crowd or something. Everyone was just like really dancing a lot. It was a small community, but the people that in that community were dancing and like really getting people excited. So Toronto bands were noticing that for sure when they came, and they were reporting back to Toronto people that Sarnia was like a really good time to party, and that the audience reacted in a way that they aren't used to. So that was like a real like true fact. It wasn't just like our small mindedness, like living in Sarnia, being like, oh yeah, we got. So when I came to Toronto, I was like, oh, it's true. Like people don't move around here. I don't really feel that way now because like there's so many shows where people are going ape shit in Toronto. So I don't know. It depends on the genre, I think. And if people are standing there with their arms crossed, it's still people still love music here. It's like a different sign of respect, I guess. But yeah, it was just kind of like a jolt at the time that I kind of distinctly noticed that people didn't get into it as much.
It's amazing how like music can hit someone so different. Like you mentioned like folding arms. I'll go to a show and I'll fold my arms, not because I don't like the music, because I'm like I don't know what to do with my hands. Like, I'm trying to look cool,
Yeah.
I'm like a 33-year-old at this rock show. Meanwhile, I go to a USS show and I can't stop dancing, grooving to the fucking show for like 2 or 3 hours. I hadn't sweat that much in so long, sort of thing. Um, with Empty Fest though, I remember being younger and going on MySpace and just typing in, ska rock and finding a list of bands, like new bands, all this stuff I can see. Um, so how do you find the acts now? Now that everything is kind of like so streamlined, like it's harder to find like these indie acts. Like there is no MySpace, and if there is a MySpace, I think I tried it like 3 years ago, and it's like ska rock and it's Sublime. Like I'm looking for the not known people sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, traditionally, I can't really remember how it happened back in Sarnia. I think actually a lot of the Toronto bands were booked by my collaborator who lived in Toronto, who was from Sarnia though. Like he's a working musician in Toronto, so he like knew a lot of the bands. So that was kind of the sourcing back then. And then when I moved to Toronto, it was more like me scouting and like getting really excited about like, okay, that band's gonna be sick.
Yeah, right. I
uh,
mean, that's so much fun to actually see a new
yeah,
act and be like,
yeah,
oh, I want these guys.
yeah, and it happened almost like always like worked out. Like they'd be available or something. I'm like, oh, sick. I'm trying to think of like if there were many bands I didn't book that I actually had got excited about. It always seemed to work out. Um, but yeah, my motto in my booking ideology for Empty Fest has always been about not so much about finding like the weird um art music, like which I really enjoy, but it's more about finding stuff that kind of is like a as interesting as it possibly can be, but still going to be like a party. Like I want people to be able to dance to it, and for if there's some kind of gimmick or something, even better. Like I love bands that dress up. I like when there's just some kind of like bombastic element to it. So every Empty Fest like has like that kind of you know idea behind it, I guess.
It's
Like
like it's so fast. Like as a musician yourself, you probably get to hear like and you know what's good and what's bad, I imagine. Um, like when you approach a band after seeing them at a show, they're always like, yeah, sure, whatever. Because like in wrestling terms, you always the promoter's always like, yeah, I can do this and do this and do this, and then it's like the person that they're talking to, they're like, I've heard this song and danced 100 times before. So like when you approach a band and say, hey, I want you to have your show, how do you do that? And like, is it casual? Is it professional? Do you have a suit and tie on? I imagine you don't at a rock show.
It was actually this year. It's like probably just because I've lived in Toronto for so long, and I am like I know a lot of the musicians now, so like it really has like changed and morphed over the years. But yeah, like this year, there's only a handful of bands I actually don't know, like personally. And like yeah, like trying once again trying to stay away from nepotism of but at the same time, this year was supposed to be about doing an easy version because I'm doing it by myself, and I'm offering everyone the exact same amount of money for the most part. Yeah, and it's like I just knew what I could pull off. So I'm like, I'm gonna reach out to my friends' bands who are like exceptional talents, and go from there. Because like I just don't want this to be like insanely stressful and to have like a big headliner that takes up 90% of the budget or something. So everyone was on board for that. Like this is what the deal is. Like can't offer much. Want to come down and party, like, and then having the like whatever you want to call it, the legacy of all these other festivals that have happened. I'm like, here's some posters from previous years. Looks like fun, right? You're in. Like yeah, you just have to like kind of sell them on it. But yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that it had been running for that long, I think it some people are a little bit like apprehensive of like, is it going to be worth it? But yeah, you have to kind of sell them on.
It's rock and roll, guys.
Yeah,
It's always gonna be worth it. And like, so you mentioned like there's some bands you have booked for this show that you've never heard before. So like, does that increase your excitement level that you're not only going to be putting on this event, but you're also going to be able to see some kick-ass bands for the very first time?
Yeah, I mean, there's been like, actually, for example, do you know Jamal Cody?
No, but tell
He's
me
a
anyways.
really, really good drummer.
Okay.
Who has actually, I think, relocated to Sarnia temporarily from LA. But yeah, I was in Sarnia visiting this weekend and like 2 days ago, and he played at Mods, and I had him actually sub in for a band that could no longer play. So he was already booked like a week ago, but I actually got a chance to see him before the festival, and he's insane. It's like really, yeah, kind of a mind-blowing set. So um that sometimes happens too, where I book somebody and then I actually do see them before. I think it's just my curiosity, just to be like, but that was kind of more of like a serendipitous kind of visit that he happened to be playing that weekend. But yeah, it kind of worked out. So I think there's only one band I haven't seen.
Has your body been conditioned to rock and roll, or do you have to take it more easier after shows? Like you're like, all right, I went to a show. I need like 2-3 days recovery. Here's my hangover cure. It's all prepared, ready to go the next morning. Or like, how do you keep up the youthful rock and roll life?
Oh yeah. Well, right before the pandemic, I was like kind of going out to shows too often. I think it was like at peak concert attendance, like 4 shows a week, maybe.
Wow.
Like, and these were like, they weren't all like, big ticket things or anything, obviously. But yeah, that was like wearing me down pretty thin. I remember thinking that I'm like, okay, I can't keep doing this, like money wise, and kind of the tendency to have like, multiple beers each night. So yeah, and I have actually kind of right now. I'm actually just trying not to. It kind of sucks not to be able to support friends' bands as much as I'd like, but it's also kind of risky at the moment. Unfortunately, we're still in the middle of the pandemic, so it's like, yeah, it's a difficult kind of situation where, yeah, it's like a new
It's a weird
way.
balancing act because like
Yeah, it's a new way of being like, yeah, currently right now it's like, yeah, pretty rough.
I know personally, like I know, like I've been to places where people are not wearing any masks at all. And like I'll be like, all right, cool, I don't have to wear a mask. But at the same time, like if I'm going to the grocery store, like a Shoppers Drug Mart, I'm always like, mask up. It's like I like when you're in like a room with like other like-minded people, I feel like you're probably pretty good. But sometimes you're just like, it's a strange, strange world we live in right now.
Yeah, I started booking Empty Fest this year right before Omicron. And because it's funny how easy you kind of forget or you just want to move on. It's like, oh yeah, things reopened. What was it, 2 months ago? Oh yeah, we're still locked down. Oh, I forgot about that. Okay, let's book Empty Fest. And then Omicron happened. I was like maybe 2 weeks into booking it. and almost like done booking it actually, like way back in November. And then Omicron happened, and I just put it on hold. I didn't even look at it for like until like January, the end of January, and then I sent out an email to everybody who I'd already booked to say like, yeah, well, I'm gonna, make a decision by like beginning of March or something like that.
Yeah.
I think I said mid-March, which is like pretty late. Um, and I kind of lied to myself, and actually kind of immediately, like a week later, I'm like, you know what? No, I'm gonna keep booking this right now and like get this out sooner than later. And then I finished booking it and got the announcement out probably like 3 weeks after I had sent that email. And then turns out that Omicron's kind of back again. So yeah, it's very frustrating. I'm just like really hoping for the best and everything can happen. But yeah, it's very unpredictable times to be a promoter.
So, like, when it's all said and done, Empty Fest is April 30th, right?
Mm-hmm.
April 30th in Sarnia, Ontario. A bunch of cast bands. It's a full day It's full day festival, or it's a nighttime festival?
Nighttime. I was gonna
Nighttime
say
festival.
sometimes we'd have a daytime element, but
Yeah.
kind of it's usually 3 days, but it's kind of like this like a condensed version of it.
Mm.
So yeah, I just packed a ton of bands on the first night. And if
And so,
mods,
like, with like this is the 10th one or 11th?
the 11th, yeah. So I wrapped up the whole series. Like I thought it was going to be over 4 years ago. That's why we took a hiatus. Like I'm like, yeah, I think it's done. And took, yeah, a hiatus would be a good way to word it. Like I didn't know if I would come back to it, but I didn't really want to think about it. And then yeah, kind of COVID happened, and then Mods Variety opened, and some of my buddies own that. So that kind of got me excited to kind of bring it back, revitalize it. And the Refined Full is also my brother's brewery.
Oh,
So like,
tell him he has good beer.
oh, thank you. So yeah, it's kind of the reason why I kind of, that final year is really fun, but the Trinity, which is like, where the whole Trinity Temple bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's like the classic venue.
Yeah.
We all loved it. That's where we started off, and that was already in kind of like a mid renovation phase. The owners like let us kind of do it in there, like while like, yeah, like bands were showing up and like the bar was kind of going up. It's like really surreal. So it just seemed like a weird send off, and I don't know what's going on with that place right now, but whatever renovations they were doing, it didn't seem like it turned into that bar that they were working on. So I don't know what's. Hopefully it comes back. But yeah, it just seemed like the proper time to kind of end it, right? And it seemed like, where am I even going to put this on? Like we had to build a stage at the other venue, at the Story, the church that was across the street. And it just felt like a lot of work. I'm like, well, until Sarnia has some venues, like this might be over, kind of thing. And then, so that's kind of why I brought it back. London Road can definitely, London Road Refined Full could hold a lot of people, and like Mods is like quite small, but it's a very cool venue. So got me excited again.
So with that excitement, like, are you able to look back on the legacy of Empty Fest with like fond memories, or is it just like one more for the road, and maybe this will be it, sort of thing?
Yeah, I I really hope that I can keep doing it. I mean, I'd be surprised if I knew that I would take a 4-year break and come back and do it.
Just once.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't feel like it's been 4 years. It's very odd, actually. But yeah, definitely look back on the previous Empty Fest with a lot of fondness. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any. I kind of live day by day. I'm not sure if I'll do it next year. If this year goes well, then I probably will. There's always a feeling
That's
of
such a great promoter line. Like, if it goes well, I'll do another one.
there is always a feeling actually right at around Empty Fest, and yeah, like until after it even, where I don't know who I'd even book the next year. Like, like I just feel kind of like spent on like the inspiration. I'm like, usually what motivates me to even do it is like I want to showcase all these different bands that have yet to play. So I'm sure there's a lot out there, obviously, but I'm just like, to make an entire festival out of those bands, it's not there yet. So that's how that happens every single year, where kind of like it has to come and go, and then me just going out and meeting friends with like different bands, going to see shows. That's what inspires me. I'm like, okay, that band's gonna be awesome. Like I want them to play a festival, kind of thing.
So like it just seems like you want to be the person that gives opportunity to people that aren't presented opportunity.
Yeah, like yeah, to some extent. But I mean, a lot of these bands are doing very well, obviously. So it's not like I'm not in any way or form presenting them with their only option, but it is a good time.
Yeah, I know what you're like. You're not like a chair. You're not giving them a charity case, but you want to see them perform. You want to help them on their journey, sort of thing, which is very admirable to do. Because I'm very much in the same vein with comedy. Where like I do the Forked River shows in London, and I'm like, new people come do 5-10 minutes, like do longer time, like get better at doing those longer sets or things. So it's a really cool thing that you're doing, man. I really it's cool as shit, man. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Now we're gonna wrap it up soonish. We've been talking for 45 minutes now. I know you got some stuff to do and you had a long shoot prior. Last pitch for Empty Fest. Where can people get tickets? Where can people see it? What are the bands? Tell me everything.
So yeah, I'll start off by saying that the capacities of the 2 nights are very different. So that's like the first year that's really happened. So unfortunately, day 2 of the 2 days is pretty close to selling out. So by the time this comes out, it might be sold out. And there's not much
coming out tomorrow, so we'll try and sell it out with this podcast.
There's not much we can do about it. But there's plenty of tickets available for day 1, and if they don't sell out in advance, then there's gonna be tickets available at the door. So, but for now, you can go on Eventbrite and search Empty Fest 11 and buy tickets there.
And what about the bands? Any teasers you can give us about the bands and stuff?
Oh yeah, I'm just gonna throw out a bunch of genre information.
Well, we all know that the cutest musician in the world, Jacob Barber, is going to be performing. That man is so adorable. He's so quiet and he's a great musician. I'm just like, we had him on our music show in the community show in Sarnia, and he's like, oh, thanks very much for having me. I really appreciate it. And he fucking killed it. I was like, you're a dude.
He's very talented. I saw him on the weekend, actually. He had a beard. Which,
oh, really? I always saw him with the mustache.
Very beard. Yeah.
He must have aged 5 years after that.
But yeah, I would. I'm not going to go through all the bands. I don't think. I think I would recommend just going on the Facebook page, Empty Fest 11, and they're all on there. I have a link to all their music and go on a discovery. But yeah, like I think you'll enjoy what you hear.
All right, Danny, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Before we go, what are the social handles for Empty Fest or yourself, so people can get a hold of you or see what Empty Fest has going on?
It's a good question. Yeah, gonna simplify that. You can go on Instagram, Empty Spaces Sarnia. That's the handle on Insta, and then Facebook. I think there's a page and a group. So I think it's just Empty Spaces, and you can contact me through there.
All right, perfect. Danny, thanks so much for being on the podcast. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Mitch.
I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation with Danny Alexander. Again, Empty Fest 11 is the 29th and 30th of April in Sarnia, Ontario, Canada. They have a great lineup planned up. And if you want to know more and learn more about the festival, go to Empty Spaces Sarnia on Instagram, and they have a Facebook group called the same, Empty Spaces Sarnia. Check them out. All the promotion will be there. The poster looks dope as shit. They got let me just read out a few of the names. Burner, Pretty, Not a Band, Zoo Owl, Gloin, Psychic Void, Horseless Headband, A Loud Thing, Rumdo, Jacob Barber and the Melody Machine, Roof Rats, Howsons, the fucking astronauts. Yeah, guys, that sounds like a fucking good time. So go check it out. Empty Spaces Sarnia on Instagram, Empty Spaces Sarnia on Facebook. Go support local music, go support local artists, go support just the local whatever it is you have in your community. You're going to do good, have fun, and it's going to be a rewarding experience regardless. That's it for me. Until next time, we'll see you guys down the line. Cheers.